And so for, the idea for this session, this whole what now thing is, I feel like this happens at a lot of conferences, especially at BriForum also, where we talk about all these new exciting things and stuff we can do and new technologies and all that, but then you just get back to your own company on Monday morning and you're like, well, shit. Like, what do we, you got all this, like your world still went on, so you still have to deal with all this facts that, all the stuff that your users are changing and asking for and everything. And you read all these great new technologies and what can be implemented. And I don't know how many saw Oren Taylor in the Lunch and Learn 20 minutes ago, where he was talking about the story about timing and innovation will happen, but the timing of that innovation is critical, because if you sort of jump too early on innovations, then it can actually cost you too much and hurt yourself. And so I kind of want to sort of look at what kind of specific action items can we have based on everything that we're doing, that we're hearing about at shows like this and what's happening in the desktop and mobile and application space. So the way I figure this, I want to kind of workshop this a little bit. So I've got, let's say, like 10 things that it seems to me like we can do now. And I want to talk through those. And then also, let's look at other ideas, specific things that I didn't think of that you're doing now. And then I'll put this together into an article or something and just say, what now? Here's like a menu item of 10 things you can do now. And by the way, I don't think for a moment that everyone is doing all 10 of these, or that they're all sort of achievable even to do, but it just, fundamentally, because we can talk about a future where users can buy whatever they want and bring it, and we're embracing consumerization, but you can't go buy the product. Like, there's no one consumerization, please. And so it's going to be like little sort of point solutions kind of all over the place. So the things, I guess, a lot of this data, you've seen this 1,000 times. So this is desktops, for the past 20 years, and I've joked before about how desktops moving forward are going to look like this. I want to put this out there as the very first thing to do now, is to get to Windows 7. And I think that we're all doing that. Is everyone done with Windows 7 100%? Yeah, that's cool. Actually, I ask this every week, and I don't think I've been anywhere where I saw a few hands go up, so that's cool. And I talked about remember last year at BriForum when we were here, I talked how, originally with Windows 7, we thought we were going to do Windows 7 and wholesale desktop virtualization, desktop replacement at the same time. And now I believe that's not happening. If it does happen in a few cases, that's fine. But I mean, to me, it seems like continuing to do things the old way and deliver this desktop to your users, this seems fine to me. So our users, we do have a lot of Windows apps. These things do have browsers in them that can access the web apps. And yes, we have to deal with different browser supports or look at browser virtualization or Browsium or these kinds of things. So there's little tactical things we can do. But the fundamental idea that we're going to keep on delivering a Windows desktop to a user, to me, that seems like something that's for sure going to be around for a long time. And if all we do is go home and pardon me, and continue to work on our Windows 7 planning and Windows 7 migration, even if we're doing Windows 7 the old way, I think I'm fine with that. So that's kind of thing one. I don't know, thoughts? Yep. Thing two. So thing two is, and this is stuff I mentioned yesterday in my presentation, and I just touched on this. A lot of stuff we talked about the future of the desktop, I want to go into more depth here. Like, this is almost like yesterday was the philosophical future of the desktop, and here's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. But I've used this example, for years, where we have, all of these are our traditional desktops, and then we look at adding in some terminal server desktop, adding in some VDI desktop, adding in some client-based VMs, adding in the OS streaming, and we see this picture of complexity that is painted. And frankly, as I also mentioned yesterday, all these blue, I'm just calling traditional desktop, but we really know that there's laptops, there's desktops, there's Dells, there's HPs, there's Lenovo's, there's all of those. So our existing sort of form factor of desktops looks like this. And yesterday I kind of gave the joke slide, what is the one thing all this stuff has in common is it's all the same stuff on the inside. So like it's just multiple modes of delivering if it's all still Miller High Life, regardless whether it's in a bottle, a can, or a keg. And so for me, one of the things we can do today is looking at this. Like the only way that you can simplify this is to ignore the form factor. So like I said, going back to the Miller High Life thing, like the person who's brewing the beer, like they just make beer. And whether they put it in a can, a bottle, or a keg, that's kind of like lower in the stack and kind of someone else's problem. Now maybe your problem is also that someone else might be you. But it's a different, like making the beer and deciding what package to put it in are two specific separate jobs. And even if they both fall under you, you have one hat on and one way of thinking for looking at the beer and a different hat on and a different way of thinking for the packaging. And so that's kind of how I feel about desktops. So I think I mentioned this maybe also yesterday. When I was at Citrix Synergy, I did a session, and Dan Brinkman is doing a session with the same title, although it's a different session here, called How to Fail with VDI. And one of my ways to fail, I say create a VDI strategy. Like, which seems weird, right? Like, I'm telling you, creating a VDI strategy is a way to fail with VDI. And the reason I say that is because to me, VDI is just a form factor. And so I don't want to create a specific strategy around one form factor of Windows that does not apply to all my form factors of Windows. So I want a Windows strategy. And we'll talk more about this. I want a Windows management strategy. I want to figure out how you're delivering your applications into Windows, whether it's app remoting, whether it's app virtualization, whether it's native installs, pushing apps. I want to see a data management strategy, a user environment management strategy. But these are all sort of pan-Windows, Windows-wide strategies that apply to every instance of Windows you have in your organization, regardless of the form factor. So the biggest thing you can do to be successful at VDI today is to look at VDI as just another way to deliver Windows. And this is exactly why my feeling is that a lot of the early VDI projects failed, because VMware deserves credit for sure for popularizing VDI in our space. I mean, we desktop people were doing desktop delivery and then kind of Citrix and terminal server for a long time. But then once VDI came out, you notice it was like the server people that started doing the VDI projects. And I don't want to get into the whole religious battle, server person versus desktop person, but we know delivering a desktop, like a VM is not a VM, when it comes to that. Like what we do on a desktop, the fact that the desktop is a VM doesn't make too much of a difference. It's still the same Windows and crazy users and all that kind of stuff. So if you treated your VDI environment like an extension of your server virtualization, you failed, flat out. And the people who were successful with VDI were the ones who were like, oh, it's still Windows, it's just a different package of Windows, and they did it successfully. Now, ironically, those people were the ones who looked at their entire landscape here and were like, oh, wow, I want to use some VDI. OK, it's going to be these two, this one, a little bit kind of here and there, which is why these early successful VDI projects were only your 500 users, 1,000 users, 2,000 users. And so many early on vendors were charging forward, how do you make your VDI success? How do you grow your VDI environment from 10% to 100%? And I'm kind of saying, why am I growing anything? Like, no one's saying, hey, how to grow your laptop population from 10% to 100%. Or no one's saying, hey, how to grow your HP workstation versus Dell. Like, yeah, the sales rep is. Well, guess what? The VDI sales rep is the same one here. So looking at and creating this Windows strategy is really the way to be successful with managing Windows and the desktops moving forward. Incidentally, and I've said this in the past, I'm a big believer that the reason you do something like VDI, the reason you pick that form factor of a desktop versus a different form factor is very tactical and specific. So think back to laptops. Why, like laptops versus desktops. Funny we don't have that session at VMworld and BriForum, right? But we have like the VDI versus desktop, so the terminal server versus VDI. But laptops versus desktops. Laptops have very specific, they are not as powerful. They have smaller screens. It's arguably a worse user experience, but I have portability. I can work anywhere I am. I don't need a network connection. I don't need power connection even. So it's a trade-off. And we as a world figured that out. And VDI, it's the exact same way. VDI is a desktop in the data center. And it gives me the same advantages of desktops in the data center since the server-based computing terminal server days, which is because everything is centralized, I have potential for better security because I don't have to worry about the state being attached to the device. My users can access their desktop from any computer in the world in 100 keystrokes or less. They can have their full working desktop. Think about that. That's cool. They can do things like, if it's a snowstorm and I want to send out one tweet, I can have 5,000 workers immediately working in a different location instead of location number one. These are all very great benefits of VDI. So let's say you want those benefits. Let's say you want VDI. And yeah, you want to be able to deliver Windows experience to devices regardless of whether it has a keyboard or not, regardless of whether it's Mac or Windows. Let's say you want to be able to turn your whole company instantly and have them working from different locations, or you want to enable users to work from anywhere. If you need those advantages, then VDI is for you, right? But so if that's the case, great. You already have Windows desktops. My argument is do exactly what you're doing with your Windows desktops today, just move them to VDI. So however you build your Windows images, if you use SCCM or Altiris, if you have manual application installs, if all your users have admin rights, right now today, if you have 1,000 users, you probably have 1,000 separate disk images. They started from the same image, but then the users, even if the users don't have admin rights, you install different applications for different users, and by the end of the day, or the end of the month, 1,000 users, 1,000 desktops, 1,000 different images. So that's your traditional environment, right? If you need VDI, why are you trying to rebuild your whole desktop image from scratch and do all this image sharing and layering and all this kind of stuff? If you already have desktops at work and you only need the benefit of moving those desktops in the data center, why don't you literally pick up those machines and move them to the data center? Now, when we go to data center-based desktops, typically we go to virtual machines instead of just doing like stacks of Dell workstations, although stacks of Dell workstations is a fine solution. Ask OnLive. And so if you just need to take everything you have and move it into the data center, do it. I'm a big fan of P2Ving your existing physical environment into your VDI. That is exact opposite of what I said a few years ago. And the reason I'm a fan of that is everything you have today works. It's fine. If you P2V your physical environment into your data center, you can literally migrate you can do your entire VDI project in a weekend. And whenever I tell it to people, they're like, well, that's crazy. And I say, why? And they say, well, I mean, how are you going to manage that? It's a nightmare. I say, I don't know. What did you do Friday? And if you had users, admins, interns, help desk, people helping, I mean, you can keep on doing that. And yeah, there's a little bit of things you have to do. You might want to put different antivirus software on. You have to put the, excuse me, you got to get the virtual machine tools added into the VMs. If you're using classic antivirus software, you need to make the times more random when they scan. There's a little script you need to make to run through it. But literally, P2Ving is going to be fine. And frankly, storage vendors have fixed this stuff today, too. So one of the problems in the past has been that you can't afford the IOPS to do VDI with every user having their own, because a desktop hard drive has like 130 IOPS. And when you're doing your VDI sizing, you're sizing for like 7 IOPS per user, 10 IOPS per user, which is insane. Because I don't know why, if we take desktops with 130 IOPS and are taking out those magnetic drives and putting in SSDs with 30,000 IOPS because the 130 is not enough, then why the F do we suddenly think that 10 in our VDI is going to be enough for us? So the way we get around that is we share images, which can be cached, and then we can have economies of scale for the IOPS, and that's the only way we can do it and make it pass the straight-face test for pricing. So my argument of you cannot P2V your existing physical desktops, if you're talking about traditional storage, there's not enough money in your company to build the IOPS you need in your data center to put all those desktops in the data center. And you can't just put SSDs in there because SSD on VDI lasts about 6 months before they go bad, unless you have a specific storage vendor that's using special consolidation and stuff. But now, look at the vendors who are down here today, like Datacore, Atlantis Computing, Versto, XIO, there's Tagile, there's who else? All these are taking different approaches to how they handle storage, but you can buy 100,000 IOPS for a low enough price that actually makes this affordable. And you can have it where all the I/O is all different. Because one thing we notice is even if all of our users have separate disk images, there's a lot of commonality amongst these disk images. You know, it's all the same version of Windows, it's all Microsoft Office. All those blocks we can cache. Even those different blocks for different users, we can cache those. All these vendors now do special things for write sequencing and things like that. So from a pure I/O standpoint, it is possible today to take 1,000 random, completely unrelated disk images and build 1,000, what the system thinks is 1,000 separate VMDKs, but really on the back end, the storage is kind of taking care of it. Question?
Yeah, no, it's just a thing that if you have been successful in publishing applications in the last 10 years and know how to take care of user profiles and everything like that, the tools has been in place the whole time. And then you will success at the VDI project. People failing at them are the ones that haven't taken care of that. I think VDI will solve the other parts. In my opinion,
I agree 100%. And we read about this in the VDI delusion, you know, that a lot of people are under this delusion that VDI saves management. And the way they argue that it saves management is because, you know, hey, just manage one disk image for all your users. Well, it's like if you're managing one disk image for all your users, like, how do they install software? Well, oh, they don't install their own software. Okay, so that's cheaper. True statement, yes. Users not having the ability to install their own software is cheaper than users who have local admin rights. Yeah, no shit. But VDI didn't do that for you. You saved your money because you took away users' rights to install software. So now you might have done that at the same time as you went to VDI and like pulled a fast one. See the article, How to Lie with Cost Models. But it has nothing to do with VDI. You saved it because you took away users' admin rights. Now, or maybe I'll say, well, you know, users don't need to install their own software, but different users need different pieces of software. You know, some users need certain apps, some users need other apps, but we can use the combination of remote apps like Seamless Windows and like app virtualization to have one base image and to give those users different apps. They say you can do that with VDI and save on management. But again, wait a second. VDI is a form factor. Yes, it's true. Giving everyone one same base image and then putting all the apps in with app virtualization and remote app delivery, yes, that is cheaper. And yes, that is easier to manage. But not because of VDI. It's cheaper and easier to manage because you're using app virtualization and using these remote app presentations. Same thing can be true with the app, with the user environment virtualization, right? The RES software and AppSense and everything that they're doing. If you have one more sort of lockdown base image, and then you use their personalization layer to both enforce settings and allow users to customize their own things, absolutely that's cheaper. But again, that works brilliantly in traditional physical desktop environments too. So absolutely that is cheaper and easier to manage. But again, that has nothing to do with VDI. It's just that people typically try to do that when they go to VDI. So my point is, this image shows all the different form factors of Windows that you need to support. And whether you virtualize applications or not, whether you virtualize the user environment or not, whether you embrace something like corporate Dropbox or not, has absolutely nothing to do with the various form factors here. So the biggest thing number two, what you can do now, what next, is to stop trying to build a separate VDI-specific strategy. If you want to use layering, layering's awesome. I love this concept. Winova's product is freaking amazing. I'm kind of happy that VMware bought them, but kind of nervous because I'm nervous that VMware is going to take away their physical, what they can do with physical devices. Winova, with their layering, is brilliant. But the thing is, I don't want someone to use Winova for their local VDI or their VDI desktops. I want, if you decide that Winova is the way you are going to assemble desktops in your environment, you use that in every goddamn desktop in your entire company. And it's physical, it's virtual, it's VDIs, it's client VMs. Use it everywhere. And by the way, that's something you can do today. And then incidentally, when that does happen, all sorts of future things become possible, like moving users now between VDI and local and client VMs, and all that kind of stuff becomes very seamless. It becomes as seamless as moving between a laptop user and a desktop user. So that's the thing here. As long as you look at delivering Windows, and look at how you manage Windows separately from the form factor. And as I said, if you really need VDI, go to VDI. You can P2V it. You can be done on the weekend, and you're getting the benefits of VDI immediately. Comments or questions? So, and I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit, but I can just mention that this idea of compartmentalizing windows and breaking up into separate layers or components, I like this a lot. So this separation layer between the OS and the hardware, yes, today we still have to have hardware-specific extensions to our OS base image, depending on what hardware you use. So you could do that with like a Winova for layering, for example. By the way, the reason I mentioned Winova for layering is because they're the ones that that do layering at the Windows level, and it can work on physical just as much as it can work on virtual. Unidesk has layering, which is awesome, but it requires a hypervisor. At least today it does. They said they're working on it otherwise. Mocha 5 has layering capability that, again, technically could work on physical, but no one's implemented it in that way yet. So that's why I keep on mentioning Winova. But taking a base image, a base hard drive image, and putting it on different hardware has required special customization anyway, right? We've got different driver sets. We do it with just configuration profiles. We've got all these things we've always been dealing with. So if I mention to someone, hey, going from physical to VDI is no big deal, they're like, yeah, but I have to put in the VM tools and the VDA and all this kind of stuff. Well, okay. Going from desktop to laptop is the same thing. I need the different GPU driver. This is no different than what it's always been. But moving towards more componentized windows, I love the idea of using app virtualization. For me, traditional apps, the more apps I can virtualize in like an app V or a thin app, the less I have to deploy the old way. And of course, there's lots of sessions here that have been talking about that. But that's great. But I want to use app virtualization. If I decide that a specific app is going to be delivered with app V, I'm delivering that with app V to every single copy of Windows in my entire environment. I'm not going to sort of use it just for my terminal server, just for my VDI apps. And then the same thing, like if I have a use case where I can deliver an app seamlessly from the data center and in a remote way, so it's via HDX or RDP, remote effects, something like that. If that works for that app, by all means, use that for all the apps. Terminal server is pretty cheap, and we have a lot of data center work to do anyway, so adding terminal server into our environment is not that big of a deal. And if it's an app that requires a network connection, so I don't have to worry about offline anyway, I'm probably not going to mess with AppV for that. I'm probably going to install natively on a terminal server. I might even do one-to-one. If I have 10 apps I'm delivering via Seamless Windows, I might have 10 different terminal server VM images and deliver all of those that way. And now it's accessing that app the exact same way regardless of what the client is. I'm going to have to install applications natively in my OS at some point just due to compatibility and user individuality and stuff. And that's fine. But again, whether I do that doesn't matter if it's VDI, if it's anything. Incidentally, remember, in my world, VDI is one-to-one, persistent, right? Like, I got 1,000 users, I have 1,000 separate disk images. Even maybe I'm using a layering or something to make that happen, but I like persistence. Because in my world, if you're doing VDI but you're not persistent, don't even mess with VDI. That's what terminal server is for. Like, terminal server is lockdown VDI. And it's the only difference with terminal server is, well, A, it's way cheaper, but B, there's no SA, VDA, VECD, none of these things, right? So I love terminal server.
No USB support on terminal server yet.
2008 R2 has USB support.
Not for storage devices.
Okay. And I think you have to be using, so it doesn't work for USB sticks?
No.
Yeah.
Not for storage drives, though. Yeah, it does. Unless you're using HDX or EOP. I think natively.
We can look at this later. I feel like it does also. Yeah, so 2008 R2, it does, yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Is that with remote effects or?
It is with remote effects.
Yeah, so not standard RDP.
Yeah, well, 7.1 client though, but you don't have to use but you don't have to have a GPU or anything like that to use it, because it's part of one of the umbrellas of remote effects, but it's a separate thing. Okay, so anyway, and granted, this is there may be reasons. My belief, eventually, we might end up doing everything as VM with VDI anyway, as hardware gets faster and faster, and the incremental difference between terminal server and VDI might be small enough that it doesn't really matter for us, and it's easier just to have one base image that's used for everyone, for every application everywhere, instead of having a separate TS image from that. But anyway, so what we can do today, app virtualization. Even if I'm going to Windows 7. I love this concept, app rationalization. I mean, look at like Centrix, AppDNA, ChangeBase, Lakeside, Liquidware, all of this kind of stuff that allows you to analyze what apps you have and then figure out what works, who uses it, what the applications need. That, for me, I want to do that today, regardless of what my future is, whether it's Windows 7, Windows 8, traditional physical VM, just getting a handle on applications and delivering the applications, even if I have no VDI in my future. I love that. I also mentioned yesterday the thing about managing the user environment, getting beyond Windows user profiles. So whether I have shared images or base images and I'm allowing the users to customize a based image, or whether I even give each user their own image and literally I have 1,000 separate VMDK files for 1,000 separate users. I love the idea of having, again, like RES software, AppSense, Sense, Triceret. Who else did I forget? There's a lot. Microsoft UEV, not so much, but that's a different conversation. But I mean, the point is we can use these products for all of our desktops. So I want to do something to manage that Windows user environment beyond the Windows roaming profiles, and I want to do that today, even if I don't have a single terminal server or VDI in my environment. So, so that's it. So where are we? So we're looking at, VDI is just a form factor. I want to manage Windows. I want to break up as much as I can. App virtualization, user environment virtualization. These are very specific things we can do today. But the common thing, again and again, the repeating theme, I'm doing this for all my users, for all my instances of Windows. Okay, so that's all Windows. Other thoughts or questions? Let's look at, so I don't know how many of you saw Jack's MDM, MAM, kind of BYO thing today, which was like 80 people at 8 a.m., day after party. Good for, I don't know, us, I guess. So mobile device, so MDM is mobile device management, MAM is mobile application management. The main difference between these two is in mobile device management, you're managing the device, so you're putting your control around the entire device. It can be encryption, it can be password policy, it can be what the users can or cannot do, which applications they can and cannot use, turning off the camera. Today's world, that can be on any platform. So even if your users have iOS or have Android devices, Jack had a funny quote today. I said, what was it, like, MDM allows you to treat iPhones like the BlackBerries you wish they were, from the IT standpoint. And so that's owning the entire device. And MDM's been around for a long time, but the problem with MDM traditionally is that if the company owns the device, like these MDM policies can be very draconian, but if it's my device, like if the company owns the device and I'm like, here's your company issued BlackBerry, it's allowed to have draconian policies on it because it's company owned. But now if we start getting into users bringing in their own iPhones, now it's a little bit hairy. So Jack was looking at MDM a lot of times will give you visibility into what apps are on there. So do they want to see that you have like snogging.co.uk local app on your phone? That's a thing, right? And so like it just gets weird when it's your own personal phone that the corporation is going to have such tight control over. There's also things around if you remote wipe, if the user loses their phone and you send the remote kill pill to remote wipe it and you delete all their personal photos off of there that weren't backed up, or what if you do the wrong phone or something happens? It gets kind of hairy. Whereas mobile application management is, instead of managing the whole phone, you only manage the specific corporate applications. So I put the secure encryption fence around just the corporate apps. So maybe my phone doesn't have a password, but when I want to use your corporate Word, then that's got the password and that's encrypted and I can remote wipe just those things. So MAM sounds badass, right? Like, we should be doing this. The problem is Jack outlined, like Citrix does this with app wrapping, with the Citrix Cloud Gateway V2. They announced at Synergy 2 weeks ago. They announced it's going to have app wrapping capabilities. So the corporate apps that you want to take, you can wrap those with this like kind of Citrix layer and remotely deliver those via Citrix receiver. So they're actually iOS native apps on your iPhone, but you can control the encryption and all that kind of stuff. That sounds amazing, right? Fine print. You need the actual source files, the source package files of that app in order to wrap it. Because you can't sit between the user and the Apple App Store, right? So if you want to wrap, Angry Birds or whatever, you got to go to Rovio and be like, hey, would you mind, like, can I sign a corporate deal with you and you give me like your source file? Like, it's not the source code, you can hack it, but like it's the package file, right? Like what they submit to Apple for the iStore, like they need to give it to you, and you're like, I promise I won't post it to our FTP sites. It's like, it's hairy. And so, how willing are these vendors going to be to do that? Or maybe it's going to be, maybe they can get the cloud gateway software and like offer a wrapped version themselves, but then that's not like an app by app kind of specific thing. So, so it's hard because this is like one of those ones that like looks really great on paper, but it's not quite 100% there yet. Jack was mentioning also that many of these MDM capabilities, like password enforcement, remote wiping, that kind of stuff, you can actually get that via Exchange ActiveSync, which we probably all have anyway. So a lot of this kind of stuff, it may not even be that you have to go out and buy MDM or MAM stuff today. It might just be that you can do that already. You just read the manual and see how to hook it up. So my kind of thinking, this is, I guess open for discussion, and Jack, maybe you have more to offer. Like, I'm not, it seems like this doesn't have to be something you have to run out and do today. Like, our company doesn't do any MDM or MAM for like iPhone users and Androids. We can just bring it in and just use it. And in terms of government regulation, our company has VPN, and then our information is on our secure file servers on the inside. But the VPN client we use doesn't work on iPhone. So there's no corporate data on iPhones as far as the regulations are concerned. Now remember, I made that joke earlier in the earlier session where I said, regulation compliance is here, good security is here. This Venn diagram is two circles that do not intersect. So what I just described to you is regulatorily, is that the word, compliant. Like, that's compliant. Because the corporation is like, no, like, it's not on unknown devices because we have to get through the client scanning VPN to get onto the network, and it's not there. Now, you all know that I personally have Dropbox at work, and I use LogMeIn. So when I need something on my iPhone, I go to LogMeIn. I log me into my work desktop, which is on the network already, also running Dropbox. I drag and drop it from the network onto my desktop, and before I can close my LogMeIn session, it's already into my Dropbox on my phone. So yes, so this example I just gave you, is it secure? Hell no. Is it compliant? Yes. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, when you're thinking about what you need to do as an organization, are you going for compliance or are you going for security? Because if you're just going for compliance, you may not necessarily have to go down the path of MDM and MAM right now. Because MDM seems a little draconian to me. It's there if you need it. And MAM, like Citrix just announced this feature. There's a lot of companies doing this, but there's, it's probably not as usable as we want this stuff to be. And there's various levels of stuff. So in Jack's session earlier, there was someone talking about how they use a package that allows them to authorize certain devices. So they can say that when users connect, user can bring in whatever device they want, and they can own it however they want. But they say that, okay, iPhones are okay, like brand name Android phones are okay. But if it's something they picked up in Chinatown, it's not going to be allowed to connect in. So there's different levels you can do there. When Jack talked this morning, though, by the way, he mentioned three things: MDM, MAM, and MIM, mobile information management, this whole like kind of data management thing. And this, I watched his session for the first time today, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was like the recommendation is this MIM, this is something you can do today. So MIM, this is like, these are the first ones that popped into my head when I made this slide, and there's actually probably like 50 of them. But this is one of my sort of beliefs now, like what specific thing we can do today is we can implement one of these things in our companies. And I like the idea personally. So if you look at RES Hyperdrive, which is a white-labeled Nomodesk I think it is, and Nomodesk is in the CG, well, I guess the booths are closed now, so you can't see them. But Hyperdrive, Nomodesk, look at like where Citrix is going with ShareFile, or VMware is going with Octopus, you can do these in on-premise ways. And what's cool, like I'll go back to using TechTarget as an example. You know, and this is one of the cool things about us working for TechTarget is, I mean, they're a 700-person company, so like it's like, you know, like a real company, and they have IT people, and their IT people, our IT people are. I like to poke fun, but I mean, I am that user now, you know, and so I don't blame them for doing what they do and how they do it and everything, and they're very kind of cost-driven and cost-focused, and I have these ideas like, oh, we ought to be using this, but they're using that one because it's cheaper and good enough, which, I mean, you know, that's the way the world works. I can't fault that. Of course, I still do my own and expense it, but I'm just one user. But my point is, like, so we have file shares, and because our file shares, you know, it's regular SMB-based file shares behind the VPN. VPN is some F5 thing, client scan, all this kind of stuff. But you know, file shares. So A, there's a VPN and all those hoops to jump through. But B, there are like it's across the network. So if I'm traveling here and my files are living in San Francisco and my PowerPoints are 100 megabytes, there's no way I'm storing those inside their file share. So I'm using Dropbox. But if they gave me Dropbox, of course I would use their Dropbox. Even if they gave me Box or one of these others that was like maybe almost as good as Dropbox, if it worked on all my devices and synchronized files, you know, I'd take it. Like, I don't specifically buy Dropbox because I want to F my IT. I buy it because I want my files everywhere, and if they won't do it, that's fine, but I'll do it myself. But I got to thinking, so I tried to get TechTarget to buy Dropbox now that they have a corporate version, but they're very like anti, they go back to the regulation thing. Because we're a publicly traded company, and we, you know, like the compliance, and if it's where the data is and data location, and Dropbox doesn't guarantee where it's going to be. So I can understand why TechTarget says no to Dropbox, but why not one of these on-premise ones? So like RES Hyperdrive, NomaDesk, ShareFile, Octopus. I mean, I can drop those in today. It's a virtual appliance, and I don't even have to have the storage on the machine. I can drop in that virtual appliance, point it to my existing Windows file server, that's my file shares, and then it has the client for iOS and Android and web and Mac and Windows and all that kind of stuff. But since these are corporate software, they do the encryption that's like not like Dropbox encryption where the key that unlocks your account is outside the encrypted folder. True story. And they can have like the remote kill, like it's built into these products that have the remote kill and remote disabling and all that kind of stuff. So even if you're not doing MDM, you can revoke the token for a client on an iPhone, for example. And then you can set up with an iPhone like, the stuff that's cached locally for offline, of course, you can't remote kill that. But the next time the person is online and uses that, it's going to see it's been revoked and everything is thrashed. So that's cool. But like we could literally do that today. The only thing stopping us is we haven't yet. And frankly, NomaDesk, I'm going back to TechTarget IT next week and telling them why not buy NomaDesk. Because look, I'm spending $99 a year on Dropbox. Jack is spending it. Gabe is spending it. Justin. So the 4 people on our team, it's $400 a year right there. We can existing file share. It's nothing. We just drop it in, have the Dropbox like on-premise functionality. So I feel like where I'm going with this, I guess, I feel confident to say like, this is like what next. This is an option of what we can do next. It's an easy win. It's like a small step we can take. It's an easy win and can really help us get a lot of that sort of corporate information that right now is out in the wild back into areas that are under our control. And so as I said, I don't know what there's lots of companies that do this kind of stuff, but these are the ones I kind of keyed in on. So I don't know. So I think that, I mean, building one of these things, dropping into your existing file structure, your file server doesn't even know what's happening really, right? It's a separate VM, just connects to it, boom, done. Seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't know, thoughts?
I think mobile device management is so expensive per seat that if you've got 1,000 of these things, you may as well invest the money in building your own app and wrapping everything into that, and then you've got something that is future-proof and there forever, not something that you have to renew year on year on year.
Yeah, the comment is that MDM is so expensive. If you have thousands of devices, maybe it's worth just building your own app, and that way you have something you don't have to pay year. And I guess it depends on what kind of apps you need and that sort of thing. That, from a vision standpoint, I definitely feel like both Citrix and VMware are spot on with their visions of the future. Citrix talks about Cloud Gateway and how it can do the wrapping and all that kind of stuff. VMware has their Horizon Horizon App Manager, which ties into Vue and to Octopus. These visions are super great, but unfortunately right now, they're not, they're just kind of like a glimpse in the, a glimmer in the parent's eye. So we think it'll be good, but of course now I guarantee you that when this cloud gateway thing comes out, I mean, it's not going to be your Zen desktop license also has this feature. It's going to be some crazy additional cost, and then off we go. But yeah, I like getting something here. I like as a win because, as I said today, like I guarantee. Did I mention this yesterday in the presentation that one of the funny things to me about this industry is we as IT professionals argue about whether Dropbox is secure, when reality is it's irrelevant because whether or not Dropbox is secure has no bearing on whether or not you have corporate data in Dropbox right now. And so who cares if it's secure or not? Because it doesn't matter, because it's there. And it's funny because Dropbox does that like single instance storage. So do you ever, like if you put Microsoft Office installation exe MSI into Dropbox, it uploads in like a second because it just calculates a hash and realizes they already have it and they just make a pointer to it. How often do you put corporate data in there and a Dropbox is updated in a second? Like we have a file called master revenue. .xls at TechTarget comes out once a week. It's like 30 megs. And I get the email from it, and I download the file to work with it locally because it's faster. And even if I feel like I'm the first one to like the email comes out 5 minutes later, I put it in Dropbox, and I see, bink, synchronization done. And I'm like, wow, that's a file for TechTarget people, and not even all TechTarget people. And I've never been the first one to put it in Dropbox. So food for thought. Another thing, so this is, I mentioned at the Lunch and Learn session that there's an approach to network security that I think we can start to think about now also, and this is the biggest fight that Gabe and I have ever gotten into in a public forum, probably anywhere actually. And Jack mentioned it in his session today also, where I had this idea that we have to change up the way we do network security and the way that we view perimeters in our companies. And so, and I touched on this briefly yesterday. For all these years, we had an office, we had resources in the office, we had users both inside and outside of that office. And historically speaking, the physical wall of the office was our physical boundary of trust. And by definition, if you were inside the office, we believed that we trusted you and we trusted your devices. And if you're on the outside of the office, we believe that we did not trust you and we did not trust your device. Now I talked about, did we talk about this yesterday? How it's pretty easy to see how this is on the network anymore. You can't trust devices just because they're in your building. And that's why I'm asking if I gave the example of a TechTarget with a Wi-Fi router. Did I tell you this? So if I guess for those who are looking confused, like the quick version is we have WPA. 2 like enterprise certificates that are self-signed at TechTarget, and sometimes certain devices we have, like the Kindle, for example, the BlackBerry Playbook, they won't get on because they don't have the root certificates. And so in me testing these things, how am I going to use this stuff at work if I can't get it on the network? And you go to IT, and they're not going to pay for a real trusted certificate because it's just internal and all this kind of stuff. So we sent Jack to Best Buy, or that's our version of like Maplins, and bought a $30 Linksys router and plugged it in to the network connection under my desk and put the router in my drawer. And we named the SSID Wells Fargo because that's a different company on the same floor as us in our building. So when the SSID appears, who's going to think that that's something? And so, done. So all that, man, our company probably had meetings and had committees to decide how to do the Wi-Fi and make it secure and save money and make it cheap out on it, and then boom, and everything I have is online on our corporate network. And when I tell that to security professionals, they say, yeah, but it's possible to hunt that down, I mean, you can, if you have a network at the security at the switch level and all this kind of thing, you can detect that there's network messages are going across and detect that it's there. I'm like, okay, yes, I'm not saying it's impossible to detect in the realm of the world, but I'm saying we don't. And think of how many of you in your own companies have all these wireless security, but really your wired network is pretty wide open, and you could do the same thing at your company. And we did this like 2 years ago, by the way, and it's still there. So it's literally in the drawer because it's wireless. And you know, it's like the game of whack-a-mole we discussed. So you put this security in place, you put this, so now you put in security to secure the port, and then someone figures out something else. So you're securing the Wi-Fi, securing the port, securing all this kind of stuff. But I'm saying that that's like very reactive. I joke about how IT security a lot of times is like airport security, that we are really good at protecting against yesterday's threats. Like we can protect against a threat we didn't know existed until yesterday. And then it's like, oh, you're gonna use a knife on a plane, we're gonna metal detect you. Oh, you're making the knives out of carbon fiber now, we have density checking. Oh, you're gonna light your shoe on fire, now we're taking your shoes off. Oh, you're gonna try and make a bomb out of chemicals even though the scientists said it was not possible, no more liquids on the airplane. Oh, you're putting the bombs into your underwear, so now we're doing full body underwear scans. But you notice like, the reason those threats didn't work is because we were lucky. We were unlucky once, and it worked. Every other time, we've just been we were lucky that that guy didn't light his underwear on fire fast enough, or that the bomb didn't, like, we were just lucky. And not good, we were lucky. And that's how we are about this kind of stuff. So instead of going after, oh shit, I gotta lock down the Wi-Fi, uh-oh, I just told you that story, are you gonna go out and buy security to scan your ports? Don't do that, that's more of a waste of money, because now I'm gonna tell the next story next year, I have a different way to get around this. The way to fix that is to not assume that we're secure here and just move that security boundary to the resource that we're trying to protect. And so as I said, and I think I mentioned this yesterday or earlier today also, that you know, in my world, why not make all the Wi-Fi is free and open? And maybe I'll put a very basic SSI or you know, like passcode on it, just so that like people on the street downstairs, homeless people, don't get on and like use that as their internet porn collection aggregation points. But I mean, you know, but other than that, bring it in. What do I care? Because if I'm protecting this thing, then pardon me, then the device or how you're getting, you know, what you're doing there doesn't matter to me. And what's nice, and then at this, I've got firewall. You know, so maybe I've got the VPN here, and there are VPN software clients now for iOS and for Android and this sort of thing. Look at, you know, we used Citrix Access Gateway back in the day before TechTarget, and as I recall, that was fine. I mean, it had a little widget in the corner, and I didn't really have to log in and out. It just kind of figured out when I had a connection, did split DNS. It didn't slow down my regular life. So why not just make it that, like, why would I use this Citrix Access Gateway for my external users but not my internal users? Just bring it in around here, put the Access Gateway around my server, and if I'm going to do client-side scan before you do the VPN, great. I'm client-side scanning here and here. And what's nice, when you do that, now the boundaries of the office kind of disappear because you don't care anymore. And because I spent a lot of time talking through this example of how users in the office are not automatically trustable because they can get rogue devices on. But the same thing is true for these users outside the office. The problem is if we automatically assume that everyone outside the office is not trustworthy and make them go through all these extra hoops and all these extra jumps, it's weird now because it's the same laptop or the same iPhone or the same iPad, but you have to do different things depending on where you are physically. That's weird. And for like normal users, oh, I need the VPN, oh, click here. No, you idiot, you gotta type this internal NetBIOS name, not the DNS name. You know, like, you know, users shouldn't know that stuff. And if we put all these extra hoops for them to jump through on the outside, like if we have a shitty old-fashioned VPN, hypothetically speaking, I don't have firsthand experience of this, but if we have a shitty old-school VPN that's a giant pain in the ass to use, what's that mean is that we are going to make it so users only use the VPN the bare minimum they have to use it. And it affects security, affects quality. TechTarget, I used TechTarget logo on the game show last night, right? I needed to get the logo, and I emailed our marketing people to send me the TechTarget logo, and they sent me the link to the intranet, which requires a VPN. And I don't know how, I can't get that VPN on this thing. So, because, you know, it's not running Windows 7 and all that. So what do? I Google for TechTarget logo, I screen scrape the logo off the web page and do it that way, you know? The same can be true with like Dropbox and all that kind of stuff. So if we automatically don't trust everyone who's outside and make it such a pain in the ass for them to get anything done, then we just encourage them to work around what we're doing. But if we make it so that we have to provide a good experience, so these old school VPN that you have to go through I don't know, I like the VPN. This a native client VPN for whatever platform I have. It's kind of always on, split DNS background. If it's always there and always working, and I can put onto any client I want, that's great, and that's the exact same user experience inside and outside. So but this to me, and incidentally, by the way, when we're doing this, as I also mentioned yesterday, now I can do this for all of my resources. So maybe this is a resource at a different office. Maybe this is one on Amazon's cloud or whatever, and I can have these VPN points on all of those, and it's not a big thing. Oh, I'm in this office, but I got to get to that, but this one has the site-to-site VPN, but it doesn't when I'm at this office. All that goes away. So my belief is that this approach is something we can start to think about now. Now, I'm not saying that means we're ripping out all VPNs and changing it, because now there's licensing fees. Our company has the same thing too, where when it snows in Boston, the company-wide the email goes around. I swear I'm not making this up. If you only need VPN for email, please use Outlook Web Access to free up VPN licenses for the snowed-in workers in Boston. I'm so tempted to send a follow-up company-wide email, reply all, says, or go to Outlook, Accounts, Properties, tick the box that says HTTP or RPC over HTTP, change your mail server name to mail.techtarget.com, and right, you're in. I haven't done that yet. I feel like that is something you can get fired for. I don't know. But I'll show you how to do it later one-on-one. And then you can tell everyone else in the London office. Actually, in London, it's a great example. So so the London Tech Target office doesn't have Wi-Fi. So, we bought a Wi-Fi router that we needed to show. Did I tell you this? We're going to the office tomorrow to plug it in and hook it up. We're not telling anyone. We're just hooking it up. And so, because we talked to people there, and well, the IT and everything. So I'm not gonna there's gonna be 4 minutes of this video that's blank, by the way. It's gonna be on mute, and there's audio problem. But you have Wi-Fi at home. How do we not have it in the office? So, but my point is that these are decisions that are made by networking and security type people. So those of us here maybe are more focused on Windows desktops and Windows applications. So we may not have the power, so to speak, to do this. And this may not be something we can go out and do overnight, because it is a fundamental change to network security and VPNs and that kind of stuff. But I'm starting to think, in the general, things you can do today. Let's start to think about bringing that security boundary in around the resource we're trying to secure, not based on the device, or pardon me, the building, building or device that we're trying to secure. Incidentally, when you do that, you need to maybe, there's other things you have to do. I don't know if you know wireless networks like Ruckus, for example, because one of the things that if you let people run wild, you potentially might have to do things like have more intelligent Wi-Fi access points that can have very specific signaling and tuning and quality of service stuff. You might need to do quality of service on your network and have more technology to do packet shaping and WAN acceleration and that kind of stuff. But that's fine. Your wireless security, the VPNs, the port scanners, that all costs money. It's just we're reallocating how we're spending money to be used in sort of more universal ways. So that's the network. Thoughts or questions?
To appease the network guys, we've actually got two firewalls, one around our server pool and one around the network as well. So that keeps them happy, and we're happy because our servers are protected. But we're a university, so none of our users are safe.
Okay, yeah. So he said they've got two rings of firewalls. One's around the network and one around their servers. The firewall around the network keeps the network people happy, and the ones around the servers keeps you happy. And maybe eventually, if the network one goes away, doesn't matter to you. Not your job, though. So, pardon me.
VPN fails in this situation, no one has any access. Whereas now it's only the people that are outside the office working remotely. Everyone in the office, 90% of your workforce can still operate.
So, comment is if the VPN fails, and you're doing this, then a VPN failure means no one can work. Whereas before, a VPN failure only meant no one outside the office can work. Okay, that's true. So, and I don't mean that, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to sound like an asshole with that, but it's yeah, you know what? You're right. If your Wi-Fi goes down, if your AD server goes down, no one can log on. So we build two, we have redundancy, we have, so that, to me, it is true, but there's so many single points of failure that we architect around in IT in general. I agree, we gotta think about that going into it, but I wouldn't use that as a showstopper to not be able to do this.
What a lot of people do this
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's no good. That is no good if it's coming from within your own network anyway.
So
They can log in.
the comment is that threats come from users, come from the internal network, which is a reason you should do this, right? As opposed to, because if you do this and assume that everyone's secure.
Yeah, when they've logged in. If they're logging in and they're going to steal data, they're going to do it once they're logged in, aren't they? So what,
Oh, but that's a separate issue though. So the comment is, if the users are going to log in and steal data, then once they logged in, they've logged in, and this doesn't protect against any of that. I agree 100%. But my feeling is that's a different conversation than the conversation about where your VPN boundary is. And the because and a lot of this kind of stuff, and this is I don't want to get too far off track on this whole security thing, but as you know, security is good for keeping honest people honest. And if people want to steal things, they're going to steal things. And we have to look at, though, we need to make it so that if someone steals something, they're breaking the law. And so we don't want to give it to them, but we want to make it so if they're going to steal it, they have to actively go and do something. So like Bradley Manning, I mentioned yesterday with WikiLeaks, that proves that the U.S. Department of Defense is not capable of locking down their data if a private first class can walk out with a USB stick. But that kid's in jail right now. So now it doesn't unleak WikiLeaks, but at that point they can say, hey, we trusted him, we signed everything, we took our reasonable measures, and if he slipped a stick in and then put it down his shirt walking out, the instant he did that, he was committing a crime, and that's what the justice system has to take care of.
Brian, we are using such a concept for smaller offices, and there are three challenges. And the three challenges are the printing, these are the local file resources, and these are the kind of PC installation processes which are somehow network-based and require transparent connectivity. These are the three challenges.
So the challenges are printing, the sort of installation process that requires connectivity to get in, like how do you join the domain to get your download VPN if you don't have it? And the third one was what?
The local file resources.
Oh, local virus, yeah.
Locally for whatever reason.
Yeah. But all these things too are not, but these are all solvable, Yeah. And so it's, and that's the thing, like this is a fundamental architecture change of the security and network environment. And I'm not saying we can go out and roll out and do that, but it seems like we need to move more in this direction.
We have been running 100% published applications for 11 years. So, in our case, it's a perfect example. Yes, we have internal firewalls around the servers, but our users, the only difference on the external is a different web interface, as you say. So we have one on the inside and one on the outside. They all have the same application and have to do 100% for the last 11 years. And that's just, we send this token with an SMS message to the phone on the outside. But
Everything else is the same, yeah.
It's the same, but you could of course do it in one, but it's the thinking of the security. Even if you have internal firewalls around the servers, we still, do we need to have users going through these two different interfaces? It's similar. It's
Yeah.
just the DNS that is different.
And that's a good point because he says, so he's doing it with published applications. He's been doing this, it's the same published applications and all the users, whether they're inside or outside, it's the same anyway. That's actually where this came from for me. So when Citrix Access Gateway came out in like 2006 or 2005, I was that's back when I was teaching these Citrix training classes and stuff, and I was a big fan of what was, controversial and edgy at the time. I said, hey, use Citrix Access Gateway for all your users because the licenses for it were built into your MetaFrame licenses and those, I guess it still is. And you just had to buy the hardware, but that was pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things. And so instead of having like Access Gateway and jumping through one hoop for the outside and then a different way to do it on the inside, if you just put your Access Gateway in front of your MetaFrame server and all the users access it that way, it was much simpler. And then so this is that idea from 5 years ago, and now we're just taking it forward and doing it with everything. So let's move on. But this is, something to think about. But this, I think, is something that's actionable today to start going down that path. The other thing is something that I mentioned yesterday, and I know way more controversial, but I'm going to say this anyway as something that I think, well, you tell me, but I'm a fan of opening up email. And when I say open email, I don't mean open source. I don't mean Gmail. I mean allowing your users to connect to your mail system via some kind of like IMAP, even if it's secure IMAP or POP or something like that, or Exchange ActiveSync. And here's my thinking on this. The view is that users there's so many services out there now. LinkedIn wants to talk to your contacts, and like Nimble wants access and all these things, and mail and all this kind of stuff. And there's Zimbra client, which is a better mail client, but requires IMAP, all this kind of thing. There's so many services out there that require email access that users want to have open access, again, like an IMAP type interface to their mail. And the problem is that if you lock that down, that doesn't mean the users don't want to use these services that require it. It just means the users are going to forward all their email to Gmail, and then they're going to use them anyway. And so TechTarget is a good example of this. With TechTarget, we do not have IMAP and POP3 open outside the VPN. So I have a server rule, a redirection rule, that redirects all my incoming mail to my Gmail account. And then marks it with a tag appropriately to mark it as read and archive it, but then I can do everything that way. And incidentally, people say, well, the Exchange admin can block that rule. OK, I'm going to use a forward then. Well, they can block that. OK, now I'm going to use a client-side rule. Well, they can block that. OK, now I'm doing it from home. I mean, so I've got a machine at home. Fine, I will have one machine that jumps through the hoops and gets on the VPN, or I carry it home in a PST. Like, that mail is going to Gmail one way or another. And there's no way to stop that, because there's always one more thing you can do. For sending, I send as Gmail, because I configure my Gmail send as bmadden@techtarget.com. And people have this idea that, like, well, but with like SPF records and stuff, it's not going to match the reverse DNS, and it's going to get marked as spam. Yeah, that doesn't happen. None of these SPF things are blocking mail that comes from Google's mail servers, because they do mail for half the world. And they've got very strong spam rules, but this is true. So I have never once had an issue with sending, so to be clear, I'm not sending mail from Gmail to my company. It is when I mail you something, it goes Gmail and out. The only mail-related resource I use from my company is the address book. And that's just because I'm lazy, but I could make that myself or download it from the intranet on a CSV and import or something if I had to, right? But the thing is that with me sending out, and by the way, with Gmail, which is free, I can enable POP3 access. I can enable IMAP access. I can send mail as mail or smtp mail.google.com or whatever on the secure ports, and you're going to get that from Brian Madden. bmadden at techtarget.com. You have no idea that it's not the mail that came from the right company and the right location and all that kind of stuff. So, so my point is that users want to have sort of open mail. They want to have. I also talk about with this whole mail thing that if you have mailbox limits in your company now of any size, mailbox limits, all your mail's in Gmail anyway. So why not just embrace that and let it happen? I'm a big fan of using Gmail. Our company runs their own Exchange servers. And why the hell they do that in this day and age is beyond me. Their explanation is Gmail has no SLA. So, which I was telling someone the story once. Are you here who I was telling? And they said, yeah, because they don't need it. Yeah, Ashley Whittle. So yeah, he's like, yeah, they don't have an SLA because they don't need it. It's Gmail. And I'm like, so what, we have an SLA? I mean, how often do I get notes about mail delayed, incoming delayed? Exchange? Seriously? Exchange? We can keep a freaking Windows machine running better than Gmail, than Google can keep Gmail running? Man, you're on drugs. And because the thing is, when Gmail goes down, okay, maybe it goes down. When Gmail goes down, they have like 40,000 PhDs immediately working on fixing that problem. When TechTarget mail goes down, we have Ray. And we paged him. We're just waiting to hear back. So how we think we can run mail more reliably than that is beyond me. And it doesn't have to be Gmail. So maybe you want an in-country solution. Maybe there's hosted mail. Look at what VMware's doing with Zimbra. There are other ways to get this kind of stuff. But my point is, regardless, having your mail so locked down, so restricted, so not able to be accessed freely means that the users are going to figure out how to get that out in the free space anyway. So why not just kind of cut to the chase, as we say, and let them do what they want to do, and then you can worry about other things. And this is something we can do today. Whether it's moving to Gmail today as a hosted service, whether it's just simply opening up IMAP. You can do IMAP with SSL. You can use two-factor authentication with IMAP. This stuff works. So this to me seems like a very simple, actionable thing you can do to enable people to do now lots of cooler things with all their, that you don't have to worry about. So I think that's an actionable thing for now. Questions or thoughts? So let's see. I've got like a whole laundry list of potential things to look at. Oh, let's talk about BYOC. Or BYO in general. So the reason I had the word O, I don't know if you can see this. It says BY, the O is bright yellow, and C. I like this concept of BYOC, BYOD, bring your own device. A couple things I want to mention about this. A, the O does not have to be literal. So some people say, oh my gosh, if users are bringing in their own device they bought, it's going to be some piece of shit, and it's not going to work right, and it's going to be the cheapest thing they could find, and I don't want to support all that crazy stuff. Well, first of all, we can enable users to be the owner of their machines, even if it's actually corporate resources, So it's sort of a mindset shift. If we're providing our applications as service via Citrix or remote presentation apps, we're providing web-based services, VPN clients. That's kind of cool because now I can tell a user, yeah, do whatever you want. And all their apps, for example, might not have access to the network. Maybe I give them a separate VM. Maybe I use like a Mocha 5 or something that gives the corporate VM as an image, and that VM can get on the network and can get on the VPN, but the other one doesn't. I don't have to actually, to allow users to have more power and control on their devices, I don't literally have to allow them to bring in their own piece of garbage and put it on the network. And the other thing that's interesting about BYO right now is a lot of people, when I say that, so I'm an advocate, like you can implement a BYO program today. And again, even if it's not working out the details of how you pay for it, if users have their own laptops, I mean, if your users, having admin rights on their laptops keeps them happy, go for it. If your users using Macs, if they want to use a Mac and that makes them super happy, I mean, we can do that today. And there's a lot of companies who sort of like resist this and say, oh, well, the problem with BYO is I can't always, like, I'm nervous to support non-corporate owned devices, or I don't really know what's on them, or I don't really know, like, I don't trust it exactly. And I say, okay, do your users ever connect from home? Yeah. You give them the desktop to use at home? No, it's their own. You see the disconnect here? So my point is that a lot of us, we call the home access PC, a lot of us have solutions for our users to be able to work from home, and they can do whatever they want on those home machines. Those machines have like viruses and malware and pornography and all this kind of stuff on it, yet we let them into our environment. So if we can do it for the home users, why can't we do it for the users at all times? So how do we deal with the home users? Well, we have VPNs. We don't do network bridging, for example. We like on our VPNs. There's a bunch of things that we do to allow the user to connect in from the unknown device. We give them access via Citrix apps or something like that. Okay, that's fine. Just do that for everyone always. And that's kind of getting back to that network thing I was talking about, where it's like standardizing, bringing your network firewall and VPN in around the resource. It's the same thing. You do it at that point, and you standardize how you deliver applications. You deliver all your data with like Nomadesk kind of thing that's everywhere. You deliver your apps via Citrix or web, or you give us desktop if you need it. You have open email. Then the users, it doesn't matter what device they use, what network they're on, where they are. At that point, you can say, yeah, for the users who really don't give a shit, here's your laptop. And if you want to use something else, your giant Dell Alienware XPS, bring it in, and we'll support it either way. Question? Comment?
How would you get around the two-factor authentication thing? Because at the moment, it's nice that our users that we perceive as being safely in the office, they could just get straight in with a domain password. Whereas if you were to put a firewall around the resources, would you actually have people in the office logging on with their RSA or equivalent?
That seems like, so the question is sort of how do you handle authentication with that? I guess because maybe what you're saying now is we're not authenticating to the machine itself because the machine is maybe not domain joined. By the way, we only have 2 minutes left, and I don't have enough time to get my soapbox against domain memberships. I'm starting to wonder if domain membership is needed now. I mean, really. Because we don't need it for deploying software via group policy. That's not quite how we're doing stuff now. Do we need to log into the domain? Maybe we log into the resources. Maybe we log into the VPN, something like that. I don't know. Domain membership, I don't know. Well, that would depend on, so yeah, whatever you're doing today, like what do you do to the users at home? And if the VPN, maybe they two-factor authenticate into the VPN, maybe you make it every 2 hours, they have to re-up their authentication, whatever.
They don't have to do that in the office, though.
True, they don't have to do that in the office, and I would say yes, you have to start doing that in the office. Would they hate that? I don't know, but it's a trade-off for the whole thing. Comment back.
Yeah, I think your comment about the domain membership, I think Microsoft are betting their Windows ARM strategy on that.
Yes. On the final word, he said Microsoft maybe are betting on that too, because Windows RT machines are not joinable to the domain. That's Windows on ARM. Well, not currently to the domain. And look at AD for Azure, right? Azure Directory Services does not support, is for authentication, single sign-on, that kind of stuff, authorization. It is not for the PCs in your office to be joined to an Azure domain. We have 10 seconds left. So I guess final thoughts. I'll put this together into an article. I guess you can comment on that, in order to, for other things. But we're not all doing all of this. But I feel like there's enough here that's like legit things we can do today that are very real and have real benefit today, and will start to prepare us for the continuing evolution of desktops and IT. Wow, I have never given a session before and with zero preparation. So thank you for seeing this first time this first time talk. Yeah, and thanks.